The deafening crack of a gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Silver Creek, Montana Territory, in the summer of 1885, sending Belinda Jenkins ducking behind an overturned water trough, her heart pounding against her ribs like a wild Mustang. This wasn't how she'd imagined her new life in the West would begin, crouched in the dirt while bullets flew overhead, her once fine blue traveling dress now coated with a layer of Montana dust. Belinda had arrived on the afternoon stage, exhausted from the grueling journey that had taken her from her comfortable life in Boston across the rugged expanse of America. Her parents' deaths 6 months prior had left her with nothing but debts, forcing her to accept a position as a schoolteacher in this frontier town. Now, barely an hour after her arrival, she found herself caught in the crossfire of what appeared to be a dispute between the local sheriff and a band of outlaws. "Stay down, madam," a deep voice commanded as a tall figure slid into position beside her, the brim of his worn Stetson pulled low over piercing blue eyes. "Name's Quinn Thornton. Most folks just call me Quinn." Another bullet splintered the wood above their heads, sending fragments raining down on them. The cowboy Quinn moved with practiced ease, checking the chambers of his revolver before peering cautiously around the edge of their shelter. "Pleased to make your acquaintance, Mr. Thornton, though I wish it were under more favorable circumstances," Belinda managed, trying to keep her voice steady despite her terror. "I'm Belinda Jenkins, the new schoolteacher." A wry smile touched his lips. "Well, Miss Jenkins, welcome to Silver Creek. I reckon this isn't the reception committee you were expecting." "Not quite," she admitted, flinching as another shot rang out. "The Bailey gang's been causing trouble for months now," Quinn explained, his eyes never leaving the street. "Seems they've decided today's a good day to rob the bank." He glanced at her, taking in her city clothes and the terror she was failing to hide. "First time in the West, is it that obvious?" she asked, attempting a smile despite the dire situation. "Just a bit," he replied, returning her smile with one that transformed his weather-beaten face. "Don't worry. Sheriff Williams has deputies positioned all around. This'll be over soon enough." As if on cue, a series of shots erupted from different directions, followed by shouts and the sound of running horses. Quinn risked another look. "Looks like they're making a run for it," he said. "Stay put a minute longer." The commotion gradually subsided, replaced by the sound of men calling to one another and horses snorting in the aftermath of excitement. Quinn stood cautiously, extending a hand to help Belinda to her feet. "All clear now, Miss Jenkins. Let me escort you to the boarding house." "Mrs. Davenport's expecting you, I reckon." Belinda accepted his hand, noticing the calluses that spoke of hard work and a life lived outdoors. As she stood, she wobbled slightly, her legs unsteady after the frightening ordeal. "Steady there," Quinn said, his hand moving to her elbow to support her. "First gunfight can take the starch out of anyone." "I certainly hope it's my last," she replied, brushing ineffectually at the dust covering her skirts. Quinn chuckled, the sound warm and reassuring. "Can't make any promises in Silver Creek, but I'll do my best to keep you out of the line of fire from now on." As they walked down the main street, Belinda became acutely aware of curious eyes watching from storefronts and windows. Quinn nodded to various townspeople, occasionally touching the brim of his hat in greeting. She couldn't help but notice how people seemed to straighten up in his presence, showing a mixture of respect and caution. "Are you the sheriff, Mr. Thornton?" she asked, curious about his apparent standing in the community. "No, madam, just a rancher. Got a spread about 5 miles outside of town, the Lazy T." His expression clouded momentarily. "Used to be my father's place. It's mine now." Something in his tone suggested there was more to that story, but Belinda knew better than to pry. They had, after all, just met under rather extraordinary circumstances. "Here we are," Quinn announced as they reached a 2-story white clapboard house with a neat picket fence and colorful flower beds. "Mrs. Davenport runs the cleanest, most respectable boarding house in the territory," You'll be comfortable here." Before they could reach the gate, the front door flew open and a plump, gray-haired woman hurried down the path, her face creased with concern. "Oh my heavens. I heard the commotion in town. Are you Miss Jenkins? Are you hurt, dear?" She looked Belinda up and down, taking in her disheveled appearance. "I'm fine, Mrs. Davenport, thanks to Mr. Thornton," Belinda assured her, offering a tired smile. "Quinn Thornton," the older woman said, her tone warming. "Should have known you'd be in the thick of things helping out." Quinn removed his hat, revealing thick, dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "Just doing what anyone would, Mrs. Davenport. Nonsense. Not everyone would risk their neck for a stranger." The older woman turned her attention back to Belinda. "Come along, dear. You must be exhausted after your journey, and now this excitement on top of it all. I've got your room ready and a hot bath waiting." The mention of a bath nearly brought tears to Belinda's eyes. After days of travel in dusty stagecoaches and now the gunfight, nothing sounded more heavenly. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Thornton," she said, turning to the cowboy who had likely saved her life. "My pleasure, Miss Jenkins." He replaced his hat, touching the brim in a courtly gesture that seemed at odds with his rugged appearance. "I expect I'll see you around town." As Quinn walked away, Belinda couldn't help but watch him go, noting the easy confidence in his stride and the way he carried himself alert yet relaxed, like a man comfortable in his own skin. There was something compelling about him, beyond his timely rescue. "He's a good man, that one," Mrs. Davenport said quietly beside her. "Been through more than his share of hardship, but it hasn't made him hard, not like some." "What happened to him?" Belinda asked before she could stop herself. The older woman sighed. "That's his story to tell if he chooses. Now come along before you catch your death standing out here in that dirty dress." Belinda followed her landlady inside, her mind filled with questions about the mysterious cowboy who had come to her aid. Little did she know that their paths would cross again very soon, under circumstances neither of them could have anticipated. The following morning, Belinda rose early, determined to familiarize herself with Silver Creek before meeting the school board in the afternoon. After a substantial breakfast prepared by Mrs. Davenport, she set out to explore the town that would be her home for the foreseeable future. Silver Creek proved to be larger than her initial impression. The main street boasted a general store, a bank, the sheriff's office, a hotel, 2 saloons, a small church, and various other businesses. People nodded politely as she passed, though she caught curious glances and occasional whispers. News traveled fast in small towns, and she suspected everyone already knew about her dramatic arrival. Her wanderings eventually led her to the schoolhouse, a modest one-room building set slightly apart from the rest of the town. She tried the door and found it unlocked. Stepping inside, she surveyed what would be her domain come Monday morning. The room was clean but Spartan rows of simple desks facing a larger desk and blackboard, a pot-bellied stove in one corner, and tall windows that let in plenty of light. A bookshelf held a meager collection of well-worn readers and primers. "Not quite what you're used to in Boston, I expect," a familiar voice said from the doorway. Belinda turned to find Quinn Thornton leaning against the doorframe, hat in hand. Today he wore a clean shirt and had evidently taken pains with his appearance, though he still carried his revolver at his hip. "Mr. Thornton," she greeted him, surprised by how pleased she was to see him again. "What brings you to the schoolhouse?" "I'm on the school board," he explained, stepping inside. "Thought I might find you here getting the lay of the land before the official meeting." "You're on the school board?" She couldn't help the note of surprise in her voice. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "Don't let the gun and the trail dust fool you, Miss Jenkins. I can read and cipher with the best of them. Even been to college back east, studied agriculture and animal husbandry at Cornell." Belinda felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. "I apologize for my assumption, Mr. Thornton. I didn't mean to cause offense." "None taken," he assured her, moving further into the room. "And please call me Quinn. Mr. Thornton was my father." "Then you must call me Belinda," she replied, finding his direct gaze unsettling in a not entirely unpleasant way. Quinn nodded, then gestured around the room. "What do you think? Will it suit your needs?" Belinda considered the space, mentally cataloging what improvements might be made. "It's a good structure, though it could use more books. How many students will I have?" 23 at last count, ranging from 6 to 16 years old. Some of the ranch children only come when they can be spared from chores, mostly in winter. "That's quite a range of ages and abilities to manage in one classroom," she mused. "You'll have help," Quinn assured her. "The older ones are used to helping the younger, and the town's committed to education. That's why we sent all the way to Boston for a qualified teacher." Belinda wandered to the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines of the worn volumes. "I brought some of my own books, but we'll need more if these children are to receive a proper education." "That can be arranged," Quinn said, watching her with interest. "The town council has set aside funds and some of the ranchers have agreed to contribute, including you." She asked, turning to face him. "Including me," he confirmed with a slight smile. "My father couldn't read until he was 30. My mother taught him. He understood the value of education better than most." There was a wealth of emotion behind those simple statements, and Belinda sensed again that there was much more to Quinn Thornton than met the eye. "Will you tell me about your ranch?" she asked, genuinely curious. "I've never been to one before." His face lit up at the question, and he launched into a description of the Lazy T 3,000 acres of prime grazing land, a herd of 500 cattle, quarter horses he bred and trained himself, and the challenges and rewards of ranching life. As he spoke, his passion for his land and animals was evident, and Belinda found herself drawn to his obvious love for his way of life. "You should come see it sometime," he concluded, then seemed surprised by his own invitation. "That is, if you'd like to. It might help you understand the lives of some of your students better." "I'd like that very much," Belinda replied, oddly touched by the offer. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sheriff Williams and two other men who introduced themselves as fellow school board members. The meeting proceeded formally, with Quinn taking a back seat to the others, though Belinda noticed they often deferred to his opinion. By the end, she had been officially welcomed, provided with a curriculum outline, and invited to a town social the following evening to meet the parents and children. As the meeting concluded and the men prepared to leave, Quinn lingered behind. "Will you allow me to escort you to the social tomorrow evening, Miss Jenkins Belinda?" he asked, his confident manner giving way to a hint of uncertainty that she found oddly endearing. "I would be delighted, Quinn," she replied, surprised by how much she meant it. His smile could have lit the darkest night. "I'll call for you at 6 then." As he departed, Belinda found herself looking forward to the social with an anticipation that had little to do with meeting her future students, and everything to do with spending more time with the intriguing cowboy who had come to her rescue. The next evening, precisely at 6 o'clock, Quinn arrived at Mrs. Davenport's boarding house dressed in what Belinda suspected were his finest clothes, a dark suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, a crisp white shirt, and a string tie. His boots were polished to a high shine, and his usually unruly hair had been tamed with pomade. He cut such a striking figure that Belinda felt a flutter of nervousness as she descended the stairs in her best dress, a deep green silk that she'd saved from her former life. "You look beautiful," Quinn said simply, his admiration evident in his gaze. "Thank you," she replied, accepting the bouquet of wildflowers he offered. "These are lovely. Picked them myself," he admitted. "Not much for fancy store-bought things out here." "I prefer these," she assured him, inhaling their sweet fragrance. "They're perfect." Mrs. Davenport appeared with a small vase. "I'll put these in water for you, dear. You two run along and have a wonderful time." The social was held in the church hall, which had been decorated with paper lanterns and bunting. It seemed the entire town had turned out for the occasion, eager to meet the new schoolteacher. Quinn stayed by her side, introducing her to everyone and smoothing over any awkward moments with easy charm. Belinda met all 23 of her future students, from shy 6-year-old Lily Pearson to lanky, serious 16-year-old James Harker. Their parents questioned her about her qualifications and teaching philosophy, while the children regarded her with mixtures of curiosity and apprehension. "You're doing wonderfully," Quinn murmured during a brief lull in the introductions. "They're impressed. How can you tell?" She asked, grateful for his reassurance. "Mrs. Miller is already planning to invite you to Sunday dinner, and old man Harker actually smiled, something he does about once a decade," Quinn replied with a wink. As the evening progressed, music began to play a fiddle, guitar, and piano, creating lively tunes that soon had couples taking to the cleared area in the center of the hall for dancing. "May I have this dance?" Quinn asked, extending his hand. Belinda hesitated only briefly before accepting. "I should warn you, I'm more familiar with waltzes than." She gestured to the energetic movements of the other dancers. "Don't worry, I'll lead," Quinn promised, guiding her into the dance. He proved to be an excellent dancer, moving with a natural grace that belied his rugged exterior. Belinda found herself laughing as he twirled her around the floor, her earlier nervousness forgotten in the joy of the moment. They danced several sets before Belinda needed a break. Quinn procured punch for them both, and they found a quiet corner where they could observe the festivities. "How did a Boston lady like yourself end up accepting a teaching position in the Montana Territory?" Quinn asked, his curiosity evident. "It's quite a change." Belinda's smile dimmed slightly. "Necessity primarily. My parents died last winter influenza. When their affairs were settled, I discovered my father had made some unfortunate investments. There was nothing left but debts." "I'm sorry," Quinn said softly, genuine sympathy in his eyes. "Teaching was the only respectable profession open to me," she continued. "When I saw the advertisement for a position in Silver Creek, offering room and board plus a salary, well, it seemed like Providence. And now, having seen Silver Creek and its citizens up close, Belinda considered the question carefully. It's not what I expected, but I find I'm looking forward to the challenge. There's a freedom here that Boston lacks, Quinn nodded, understanding in his gaze. The West has its hardships, but there's room to breathe, room to become whoever you want to be without the weight of the past pressing down. Is that what happened for you? She asked, sensing a story behind his words. A shadow crossed his face. In a way. My father came west with nothing but determination and built the Lazy T from scratch. When he died 3 years ago, I inherited not just his ranch but his reputation, both good and bad. Bad, she prompted gently. Quinn hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. My father wasn't always law-abiding in his early days. He rode with some rough men before he met my mother and settled down. There are those who have never forgotten or forgiven those times, who look at me and see only Silas Thornton's son. That must be difficult, Belinda said, moved by his candor. It was at first. But I've worked hard to prove myself on my own terms. Most folks around here judge me by my actions now, not my father's past. He smiled ruefully. Most, anyway. Before Belinda could respond, they were interrupted by Sheriff Williams, who needed to speak with Quinn about a matter concerning water rights. Quinn excused himself reluctantly, promising to return soon. Left alone, Belinda found herself approached by a group of women, wives of ranchers and townspeople, who were eager to learn more about her. Their questions were friendly but probing, clearly assessing whether she would fit into their community. Quinn Thornton seems quite taken with you, one woman observed with a knowing smile. I haven't seen him so attentive to a lady since, well, in quite some time. There were meaningful glances exchanged that made Belinda wonder what history they were alluding to. But before she could inquire, the conversation shifted to plans for the upcoming Harvest Festival. When Quinn returned, he found her surrounded by chattering women and rescued her with a request for another dance. As they moved around the floor, Belinda found herself studying his face more closely, the laugh lines around his eyes, the small scar above his right eyebrow, the way his expression softened when he looked at her. "You're staring, schoolteacher," he teased gently. "Do I have punch on my nose?" "No," she replied, embarrassed at being caught. "I was just wondering about you." "Wondering what?" "Why a man like you, educated, successful, respected, remains unmarried in a place where eligible bachelors must be in short supply." The question seemed to catch him off guard, and for a moment the rhythm of his steps faltered. "That's a rather personal inquiry, Miss Jenkins," he said, his tone light but with an undercurrent of something deeper. "I apologize if I've overstepped," she said quickly. Quinn sighed, his gaze moving over her shoulder to some distant point before returning to her face. "No, it's a fair question. The simple answer is that I haven't found the right woman, or perhaps I did once, but circumstances weren't in our favor." There was pain in those words, old but still tender, and Belinda regretted causing it. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have pried." "Don't be," he assured her, his smile returning. "It was a long time ago, and tonight isn't for dwelling on the past." The music changed to a slower waltz, and Quinn drew her slightly closer, his hand warm against the small of her back. They moved together with surprising harmony, as if they'd danced together for years rather than minutes. "You dance beautifully," she murmured, allowing herself to enjoy the nearness of him. "My mother insisted I learn, said no son of hers would embarrass her at social functions by stumbling around like a newborn calf." His eyes crinkled with the memory. She'd be pleased to know her lessons stuck. "She sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was," he agreed, a touch of sadness in his voice. "You remind me of her sometimes, your determination, your dignity even when faced with gunfights on your first day in town." Belinda laughed softly. "I'm not sure how dignified I was, hiding behind a water trough. Trust me, many would have fainted dead away. You showed grit." As the evening drew to a close, Quinn escorted Belinda back to Mrs. Davenport's boarding house, their conversation flowing easily on topics ranging from books they'd both read to their favorite seasons. At the gate, he paused, reluctance evident in his stance. "I've enjoyed this evening immensely, Belinda," he said, his voice lower, more intimate in the quiet night. "As have I," she replied honestly. "Thank you for making my introduction to Silver Creek so pleasant." "Would you," he hesitated, then pressed on, "would you consider joining me for a ride out to the Lazy Tea tomorrow? It's your last day before school starts, and I'd like to show you a bit of the country." The invitation sent a thrill through her that she couldn't quite explain. "I'd like that very much, but I should warn you that I'm not an experienced rider." His smile was reassuring. "I've got a gentle mare who'll treat you right. I'll bring her by around 10 if that suits you." 10 would be perfect, she agreed. Quinn took her hand, his touch sending warmth up her arm despite the cool evening air. For a moment she thought he might kiss her, but instead he raised her hand to his lips in a gesture both courtly and restrained. "Good night, Belinda Jenkins. Sweet dreams." "Good night, Quinn," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As she watched him walk away, Belinda knew with sudden clarity that her life in Silver Creek would be nothing like she had imagined, and all because of the cowboy who had come to her rescue on that dusty street just 2 days ago. The following morning dawned clear and bright, with the kind of crystalline blue sky that seemed peculiar to the Montana Territory. Belinda dressed carefully in the riding habit she'd brought from Boston, hoping it would be suitable for a western excursion. Mrs. Davenport eyed the outfit with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Very fine, dear, but you might find those skirts a bit cumbersome for a day in the saddle," she observed. "Most ladies around here ride astride in split skirts when they're heading out to the ranches." "I'm afraid this is all I have," Belinda admitted, suddenly self-conscious. "Well, it'll have to do for today. But if you're planning to do much riding, you might want to commission something more practical from Mrs. Turner. She's our seamstress and quite talented." At precisely 10 o'clock, Quinn arrived with 2 horses, a magnificent chestnut gelding for himself and a dappled gray mare for Belinda. He, too, looked momentarily taken aback by her formal riding habit, but recovered quickly. "You look lovely, though I fear that outfit might be a bit warm for our ride," he said, helping her mount with strong, sure hands at her waist. "Mrs. Davenport suggested I might need something more practical in the future," Belinda replied, settling awkwardly into the unfamiliar Western saddle. "She's right, but we'll manage today. Daisy here is steady as they come. Just relax and follow my lead." True to Quinn's word, the mare was gentle and responsive, seeming to sense Belinda's inexperience and compensating accordingly. They rode at a leisurely pace out of town, Quinn pointing out landmarks and sharing stories about the area's history. As they crested a small rise, Belinda gasped at the vista spread before her rolling grasslands stretching to distant mountains, the landscape painted in hues of gold, green, and purple. A hawk circled lazily overhead, its cry carrying on the breeze. "It's magnificent," she breathed, overwhelmed by the sheer scale and beauty of the country. "This is what drew my father west," Quinn said, his pride evident. "He used to say a man could breathe out here, that the land itself had a heartbeat if you knew how to listen for it." They continued their journey, crossing a shallow stream where Quinn pointed out fresh deer tracks, and passing through a grove of cottonwoods where they startled a family of quail. By the time the buildings of the Lazy T came into view, Belinda had developed a new appreciation for the rugged beauty of her adopted home. The ranch itself was impressive, a large 2-story house built of squared logs and native stone, with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Nearby stood a bunkhouse, barn, corral, and various outbuildings, all well-maintained and speaking of prosperity and hard work. "Welcome to the Lazy T," Quinn said as they rode into the yard. "Not as fancy as what you're used to in Boston, I expect, but it's home." "It's wonderful," Belinda replied sincerely, taking in the peaceful scene. Several cowboys were working in the corral, and an older Mexican woman appeared on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. "Senor Quinn, you bring company for dinner." "I make extra tamales just in case," she called, her face lighting up at the sight of Belinda. "That's Rosa," Quinn explained as he dismounted and came to help Belinda down. "She's been with us since I was a boy housekeeper, cook, and second mother all rolled into one." Belinda's legs felt wobbly after the long ride, and she was grateful for Quinn's support as he lifted her down. His hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary, and she found herself looking up into eyes that reminded her of the Montana sky. "Thank you," she murmured, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Quinn cleared his throat and stepped back. "Let me show you around before dinner. Rosa's tamales are worth the wait, I promise." The tour of the ranch was enlightening. Quinn showed her the operation with obvious pride, the breeding stock he was developing, the improvements he'd made to the irrigation system, the orchard he'd planted that was just beginning to bear fruit. Everywhere they went, his workers greeted him with genuine respect, and Belinda could see the mutual loyalty between Quinn and the men who worked for him. Dinner was served in a dining room dominated by a massive oak table that Quinn explained his father had hauled all the way from St. Louis by wagon. Rosa's tamales were indeed delicious, as were the accompanying dishes of beans, rice, and fresh vegetables from the kitchen garden. "This is all wonderful," Belinda said as Rosa served apple pie for dessert. "I can see why you love it here." "It's not always this peaceful," Quinn admitted. "Ranching has its challenges: drought, blizzards, rustlers, market prices that can change overnight. But on days like today, there's nowhere else I'd rather be." After dinner, they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in spectacular colors. The day's warmth was giving way to the cool of evening, and Quinn draped a soft blanket around Belinda's shoulders. "Are you happy with your decision to come west?" he asked, settling into the chair beside hers. Belinda considered the question carefully. "I am, though I've barely begun my life here, Ask me again after I've faced a classroom full of children on Monday morning. Quinn chuckled. Fair enough, but for what it's worth, I think you'll do fine. You have a way about you, steady, kind, but firm. The children will respond to that. I hope you're right, she said, touched by his confidence in her. They fell into a comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds, crickets beginning their evening chorus, the distant lowing of cattle, the soft nickering of horses in the barn. I should get you back to town before it gets too late, Quinn said eventually, though he made no move to rise. Yes, I suppose you should, Belinda agreed, equally reluctant to end their time together. As they prepared to leave, Quinn hesitated, then said, There's something I'd like to show you before we go if you're not too tired. I'm not tired at all, she assured him, curious. Quinn led her away from the house, up a gentle slope to a small fenced plot where several grave markers stood in neat rows. The family cemetery, he explained quietly. My parents are buried here, along with my grandparents and a baby sister who died before I was born. Belinda was moved by his willingness to share something so personal. Thank you for bringing me here. Quinn stood before one particular marker, his expression thoughtful. My mother would have liked you. She was always after me to find a woman with both spirit and gentleness. The implication of his words hung in the air between them, neither acknowledging yet neither denying the growing connection they both felt. The ride back to town was quieter, each lost in their own thoughts as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. When they reached Mrs. Davenport's, Quinn once again helped Belinda dismount, his hands lingering at her waist. Thank you for today, she said softly. I've never experienced anything like it. The pleasure was mine, he replied, his voice equally low. Perhaps we could do it again sometime. I'd like that very much. This time, Quinn did not just kiss her hand. He leaned forward slowly, giving her ample time to step away if she wished, and pressed his lips gently to her cheek. The touch was brief, but sent a cascade of warmth through her body. Good night, Belinda Jenkins, he whispered. I'll see you at church tomorrow. As he rode away, Belinda touched her cheek where the warmth of his lips lingered, wondering at the swift and unexpected feelings this cowboy had awakened in her. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of activity as Belinda settled into her role as Silver Creek schoolteacher. The children proved to be bright and eager to learn, though managing the wide range of ages and abilities was indeed challenging. She found herself working long hours, preparing lessons and grading papers, but the satisfaction of seeing her students' progress made the effort worthwhile. Quinn became a regular visitor, often stopping by the schoolhouse after classes ended to escort her on walks or to invite her to community events. Their friendship deepened with each meeting, their conversations ranging from literature to politics to their hopes for the future. Belinda found herself looking forward to his visits with an anticipation that both thrilled and frightened her. One crisp October afternoon, as autumn painted the cottonwoods along the creek in shades of gold, Belinda dismissed her students early due to a developing headache. She was gathering her things when the door opened and Quinn entered, a bouquet of late wildflowers in his hand. You're early today, she observed, unable to suppress a smile despite her discomfort. Finished my business in town sooner than expected, he replied, then frowned as he noticed her pallor. Are you unwell? Just a headache, she assured him. I sent the children home early. I thought some quiet might help. Quinn set the flowers on her desk and moved closer, concern evident in his expression. You've been working too hard. Let me walk you back to Mrs. Davenport's. That's not necessary, she began, but a wave of dizziness cut her protest short. Quinn was at her side instantly, his arm around her waist, steadying her. No arguments, schoolteacher. You need rest. Too weary to protest further, Belinda allowed him to escort her back to the boarding house, where Mrs. Davenport took one look at her and declared she needed a hot cup of willow bark tea and a dark room. I'll call on you tomorrow to see how you're feeling, Quinn promised as Mrs. Davenport shooed him away. Rest now. The headache worsened through the night, accompanied by fever and chills that left Belinda weak and disoriented. By morning, Mrs. Davenport was sufficiently concerned to send for the doctor, who diagnosed influenza and prescribed complete bed rest. For the next week, Belinda drifted in and out of consciousness, vaguely aware of cool cloths on her forehead and gentle hands helping her drink broth and medicine. In her lucid moments, she recognized Mrs. Davenport, the doctor, and sometimes Quinn, his face drawn with worry as he sat by her bedside. On the 8th day, the fever finally broke, leaving Belinda exhausted but clear-headed for the first time in days. She opened her eyes to find Quinn dozing in a chair beside her bed, his hand resting near hers on the coverlet. The sight of him there, clearly having kept vigil, brought tears to her eyes. "Quinn," she whispered, her voice rough from disuse. He woke instantly, relief flooding his features as he saw her looking at him with recognition. "Belinda, thank God, how do you feel?" "Weak," she admitted. "How long have I been ill?" "A week," he said, taking her hand gently in his. "The doctor wasn't sure." "That is, we were worried for a while there." "Who's been teaching my students?" she asked, practical concerns surfacing even in her weakened state. Quinn smiled, shaking his head slightly. "Typical, you're barely back from death's door and you're worried about your pupils." "Mrs. Turner has been filling in. She taught school before she married." Belinda relaxed slightly, knowing her students were in good hands. "And you, have you been here all this time?" "Not constantly," he said, a faint flush coloring his cheeks. "Mrs. Davenport wouldn't allow that. But I've been checking on you several times a day." "Thank you," she whispered, squeezing his hand weakly. Quinn's expression grew serious. "When I thought we might lose you, Belinda, I realized something I should have told you before." Her heart quickened at his tone. "What is that?" Before he could answer, Mrs. Davenport bustled in with a tray. "Oh, you're awake. Wonderful. I've brought some broth, dear. You need to build your strength." Quinn released Belinda's hand and stood. "I'll let you rest and eat. I'll come back this evening if that's all right." "Please do," Belinda replied, disappointed by the interruption but understanding the need for propriety. True to his word, Quinn returned that evening, bringing a book of poetry to read aloud as Belinda reclined against her pillows, still too weak to sit up for long. His deep voice gave new life to the familiar verses, and Belinda found herself watching his face as he read, appreciating the expressiveness of his features and the gentleness that belied his rugged exterior. When he finished reading, Quinn set the book aside and took her hand again. "There's something I need to tell you, Belinda. Something I should have said before you fell ill." "What is it?" she asked, sensing the importance of the moment. Quinn took a deep breath. "I've developed feelings for you, strong feelings. I know we haven't known each other long, but these past weeks, well, they've meant more to me than I can express." Belinda felt warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with fever. "Quinn, you don't need to say anything now," he interrupted gently. "You're still recovering. I just wanted you to know, when I thought I might lose you before I'd even had the chance to." He shook his head, leaving the sentence unfinished. Gathering her courage, Belinda said softly, "I've developed feelings for you too, Quinn, strong ones." The smile that illuminated his face could have outshone the sun. "You have?" "Yes," she confirmed, a matching smile spreading across her own face despite her weakness. Quinn brought her hand to his lips, pressing a fervent kiss to her knuckles. "Get well, Belinda Jenkins. Get well so I can court you properly the way you deserve." "I'll do my best," she promised, her heart lighter than it had been in years. As autumn deepened into winter, Belinda regained her strength and returned to teaching. Quinn courted her with a thoroughness that charmed both Belinda and the entire town. He brought her small gifts, a book of poetry, a handcrafted wooden box for her desk, wildflower honey from his own hives. They attended church socials and community dances together, rode out to the lazy tea on fair weekends, and spent quiet evenings reading by the fire in Mrs. Davenport's parlor. Their growing relationship was not without challenges. Quinn's responsibilities at the ranch kept him busy, especially as winter set in with heavy snows that required constant vigilance to protect the cattle. Belinda's duties as teacher expanded when she agreed to offer evening classes for adults who wanted to improve their reading and writing skills. Then there was the matter of Eliza Harrington, the banker's daughter, who had apparently set her cap for Quinn long before Belinda arrived in Silver Creek. Her pointed remarks and cool glances made it clear she considered Belinda an unwelcome interloper. "Pay her no mind," Quinn advised when Belinda mentioned Eliza's hostility. "She's always assumed we'd marry someday because our fathers were friends, but I never encouraged her." "She seems quite determined," Belinda observed after a particularly uncomfortable encounter at the general store. "Not as determined as I am to spend my life with the woman I actually love," Quinn replied, then froze as he realized what he'd said. Belinda's heart skipped a beat. "Quinn," he took both her hands in his gaze direct and unwavering. "I love you, Belinda Jenkins. I think I started falling in love with you the moment I saw you hiding behind that water trough on your first day in town, looking terrified but determined not to show it." Joy spread through her like sunshine. "I love you too, Quinn Thornton, more than I ever thought possible." Their first real kiss, there on the snowy path behind the schoolhouse, was everything Belinda had dreamed a kiss should be, tender yet passionate, a promise of deeper intimacy to come. As Christmas approached, Quinn invited Belinda to spend the holiday at the Lazy Tea, along with Mrs. Davenport as chaperone. Rosa had decorated the house with evergreen boughs and red ribbons, and a magnificent tree stood in the corner of the parlor, adorned with candles and handmade ornaments. On Christmas Eve, after a festive dinner where several of Quinn's ranch hands joined them at the table, they gathered in the parlor to exchange gifts. Quinn gave Belinda a beautiful silver locket containing a small photograph of himself, while she presented him with a hand-knitted scarf in the blue of his eyes. Later, as Mrs. Davenport dozed by the fire and Rosa bustled about in the kitchen, Quinn led Belinda to a quiet corner of the room. "I have one more gift for you," he said, his voice low and slightly nervous. "Quinn, you've already been too generous," she protested. "This one's different," he replied, reaching into his pocket. To Belinda's astonishment, he dropped to one knee before her, opening a small velvet box to reveal a delicate ring with a single perfect pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "Belinda Jenkins, these past months have been the happiest of my life. You've brought light and learning and laughter to Silver Creek and to me. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears of joy sprang to her eyes. "Yes, Quinn, yes, with all my heart." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to gather her in his arms for a kiss that sealed their promise to one another. Mrs. Davenport, who had apparently not been sleeping as deeply as they'd thought, let out a delighted cry. "Oh, my dears, how wonderful!" Soon the entire household was celebrating the engagement, with Rosa bringing out a special bottle of wine Quinn's father had been saving for a momentous occasion. "To Quinn and Belinda," Mrs. Davenport proposed, raising her glass. "May your life together be as beautiful as the love that brought you to this moment. And may you fill this house with children and laughter," Rosa added with a knowing smile that made Belinda blush. Later that night, as a light snow fell outside, Belinda stood at the window of her guest room, admiring the way her ring caught the lamplight. A soft knock at her door preceded Mrs. Davenport's entrance. "I thought you might like some company before bed," the older woman said, settling into a chair. "It's been quite an evening." "It has indeed," Belinda agreed, still hardly able to believe her good fortune. "You know, when you first arrived in Silver Creek, all disheveled from that gunfight, I wondered how long you'd last out here," Mrs. Davenport admitted. "Eastern ladies often find our ways too rough." "I wondered the same myself," Belinda confessed. "But then I met Quinn and somehow—" "Everything changed," Mrs. Davenport nodded sagely. "Love has a way of doing that, making a place feel like home, no matter how foreign it seemed at first. It wasn't just Quinn," Belinda said thoughtfully. It was the children, the community, the land itself. But yes, loving him has made Silver Creek truly home. The wedding took place the following spring, when the prairie was carpeted with wildflowers and the air was sweet with promise. The entire town turned out for the celebration, held in the churchyard under a canopy of blue sky. Belinda wore a gown of ivory silk that Mrs. Turner had lovingly created, with lace from her mother's wedding dress incorporated into the veil. Quinn waited for her at the altar, tall and handsome in his new suit, his eyes never leaving her as she walked toward him on the arm of Sheriff Williams, who had offered to give her away in the absence of her father. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, their vows spoken clearly for all to hear. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn lifted Belinda's veil and kissed her with such tenderness that several of the town's ladies dabbed at their eyes with handkerchiefs. The celebration continued well into the evening, with dancing and feasting and speeches offering good wishes to the newlyweds. As twilight descended, Quinn and Belinda slipped away to begin their journey to the Lazy T, now their home together. They rode in comfortable silence for a time, both absorbing the reality of their new status as husband and wife. As they crested the hill overlooking the ranch, Quinn reined his horse to a stop. "What is it?" Belinda asked, drawing her mare alongside his. Quinn gestured toward the valley below, where the buildings of the Lazy T glowed golden in the last light of day. "I wanted to stop here, just for a moment, to remember this our first view of our home as husband and wife." Touched by the sentiment, Belinda reached across to take his hand. "It's beautiful, Quinn, all of it." As they sat there, the first stars appearing in the deepening blue of the sky, Belinda was overcome with a sudden wave of emotion, gratitude, joy, and a lingering trace of the insecurity that had followed her west. "Quinn," she whispered, her voice catching. "Nobody has ever loved me the way you do. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real that someone like you could love someone like me." Quinn turned to her, his expression serious in the fading light. She whispered, "Nobody loves me," he quoted softly, then smiled, his eyes filled with promise. The cowboy answered, "I do, and I always will, Belinda Thornton, until the day I die and beyond." As they rode down the hill toward their future together, Belinda knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, the Boston schoolteacher and her Montana cowboy, bound by a love as vast and enduring as the western sky above them.